Okay, let's look at some more examples of if statements in PHP, most of all to understand the syntax, and we'll look at some more complicated examples as well. Let's look at a simple example though. Let's say we've got an age situation. We want to see if somebody's older than 21. So let's say we have that stored in this variable here. So we're going to do if, parentheses, curly brackets, and no semicolon here on the if, and then your comparison is going to go in here. So if we want to see if this person is older than 21, we want to look at the contents of that var1 variable. So I'm going to say if var1, I can do greater than 20 would be one way to do it. So only if they're greater than 20 would it get past this test. So they're going to have to be 21 or older. And again, let's just see if this works. So if they are, we'll echo something out. And we'll keep it simple for this example because I want to show you a couple more complicated examples here. So we got a yes message there. Let's take a look at our code just to make sure that makes sense. Variable 1 has the value of 22 in it. We're saying if variable 1 is greater than 20, it's going to go in here and echo this message. So it passed the test. Variable 1 is greater than 20, so it must be 21 or higher. So it went in here and did the output. Let's look at a different example, and then I'll talk about some additional things we need to consider. Let's do an example where we're getting something from a user. So instead of just typing a static value here, I'll get it from a web form. So I'm going to do $_post and get a value from the web form. I think my text box is called TB1. So this will take something that the user's typed, we won't know what it is, and put it in this variable 1, and then we can test it using an if for one situation or another. So we'll say we'll look for a username situation. So they'll type something in this box here. It'll send it to our PHP page. We'll get it in this variable, and then we'll do an if to test it. So again, we're going to test variable 1. Don't forget the $sign on that. And we're going to test for a particular name. So this is going to be an equality test. So I'm going to have variable 1 equal to some value, which is going to go in quotes if it's a string. And we'll print something out. So we'll type something, and we'll talk about the how this if is going to evaluate, and then we'll talk about maybe one additional thing we can do as well. Let's give it a try first. Let's try Jenny and see if this works or not. So it printed something out, so it must have passed our if. So we got it from the box. We're not sure what it is, but then we're saying if variable 1 equals Jenny, output a message. So if we go back and type something other than that, no message. A couple things I want to note about when you're testing strings like this. Let's try a situation and see if it works or not. Let's try lowercase Jenny. Notice it doesn't print anything. So one thing to keep in mind when you're writing your if statements is it's looking for an exact match here. So if we type all caps Jenny, or notice if we type lowercase, it didn't pass this test, it didn't print the information. So there's ways around that, but one way around it would be to use a to upper conversion. So since we're talking about testing values with ifs and we want our test to be true, one thing we could do to make this a little more foolproof, since we don't know if they'll type all caps or mixed case or lowercase, instead of writing a bunch of ifs, we could just make this one if that we have here a little more foolproof. And the way to do that would be to, let's just put this in all caps here. And we'll say str TOUPPER, and I'll talk about that function in just a moment. But let's test this and see. It's looking for all caps, so let's try it with lowercase and see if it works. Got lowercase here. Notice it worked. It somehow passed and went in there and printed our message. So like I said, rather than print a bunch of, or use a bunch of different ifs to check for uppercase, lowercase, what I'm going to do is take whatever they typed in the variable 1, convert it to uppercase, and then compare it to the uppercase version of what I'm looking for. So in the value that I'm trying to match, I have all caps Jenny, and then over here, I'm taking whatever they typed in variable 1 and converting it to uppercase with this str2upper. So that function is just str2upper, all lowercase, all one word, parentheses around the value you're trying to convert. Let's look at one more thing that we're going to want to do when we're writing these ifs. So we have a rough idea of how to do if statements, but typically with an if, we want to write something for that other case we talked about. So if they type something else, they don't just see a blank screen. So probably 70, 80, 90% of the time when you write an if, you'll write what's called an else to go along with it. So I want to show you how to do that real quick. So we have our if, but in case it doesn't pass this, in case variable 1 isn't equal to Jenny, we can write an else directly below it. So here are the syntax rules for an else. The else is going to always be paired with an if. So we can't just write else, but if we have an if here, directly after it, after the if, we could have lowercase else. And the else is going to have its own curly brackets just like the if does. So if it doesn't pass this, it could fall into the else and do whatever we put here. Let's just put unknown user or something here. So now if they do type something other than what we were testing for, at least we'll see a message. So the rules on the else, it should be paired with an if. The else doesn't have any parentheses or comparison. So if it doesn't pass this, this is just going to catch all other situations. You know, even if they type something strange or unexpected in here, now our else will catch that. So the else is just the keyword else, no parentheses, and of course no semicolon. And then the rest is just like the if. It's got the curly brackets and whatever bunch of code you want to put inside of it. So this will catch a particular thing, and this will catch all other situations.